In this video, we're going to talk about response pads, and response pads are these little O-rings that go on the inside of a lot of yo-yos today. And what they're for is they help the yo-yo come back up when you want it to come back up. And so as you can see, response pads, they can be different sizes. They can also be different colors. And so on our website, what we do is on every yo-yo page, we've got a recommended section, and we tell you what size response pad goes in the yo-yos. And we also tell you specifically what response pad we think works best in any particular model. And what they're for is they help the yo-yo come back to your hand. And so when you pull up a responsive yo-yo, the string kind of grabs on to those response pads and it helps it wind back up. On an unresponsive yo-yo, the same thing happens when you execute a bind. And so in this video, we're going to talk about two things. And we're going to talk about first, when do you need to change your response pads? And second, we're going to talk about how to change them. And so the most obvious thing is when you need to change them is if your response pads have fallen out of the yo-yo. That means the adhesive that attaches them to the yo-yo has worn out and they're not going to be able to go back in, and so of course you're going to want to change them at that point. Now sometimes this can happen if you get a little bit of lube on the yo-yo or on the response pad that can actually respond with the material of the response pad in a weird way that causes it to expand and kind of pop out. So you want to make sure if you ever lube your bearing, you want to take it out of the yo-yo first. And sometimes just over time the adhesive can wear off and they'll come out, and so you'll need to replace them then. But a lot of times you're going to have to decide to change your response pad before it comes out. And the main reason why you would even think about it is if the yo-yo just isn't coming back to your hand as quickly or as efficiently as you want it to. And so with a responsive yo-yo, there can actually be a couple of reasons why this happens, and it is not always going to be because of the response pads. And so before you go ahead and change them, the first thing that you should probably do if your yo-yo is not responding as well as you like is you should lube the bearing with thick yo-yo lube. And in almost every case, that'll solve the problem. Another thing that you could try is you can try replacing the string, especially if you've got an older string. They tend to get thinner over time, so yo-yos aren't going to respond quite as well. So if you change the string, a lot of times that'll solve the problem. On an unresponsive yo-yo, especially if you get a new one, you may find that the yo-yo isn't responding as well as you like, or maybe the binds are a little bit slippy. Another thing that you could try is you could try a thicker string. And thicker strings tend to respond a little bit easier in both kinds of yo-yos, so that's another thing you can try. But if you've had your yo-yo for a little while, then you may find that it is indeed time to change the response pad. And so one real easy way to tell is if you open the yo-yo up and you look at the response pad on a well-used yo-yo, what you'll find is that the outer edge is typically flush with the yo-yo. But the inner edge, if you look at it, it's actually kind of drawn in a little bit. It's been worn away so that it's no longer flush with that inner edge of the yo-yo. And so if that's happening a lot and you're finding that your binds are a little bit slippy or the yo-yo isn't responding the way you like, then it's a good time to change it. And so the first thing you'll want to do is you're going to want to get this response pad out. And so what a lot of people do is they just use the hex key of their multi-tool, and you can kind of push into it and get that response pad out. You can also just use your fingernail, and typically it's not too hard to just pry it away. You could also use a toothpick or something like that, and that should work just fine. Now, as you're peeling the old response pad out, what you're going to find is there's a lot of adhesive that's left over from that response pad. And so sometimes it'll even peel away almost like it's a little piece of paper. And so you can just kind of peel that out. If it breaks off like that, then you can use your toothpick, or if you have your multi-tool, you can use that to kind of scrape it free a little bit, and you can see that the rest of that is just starting to peel out, and hopefully you can get that out clean. You want to get that out as much as you can so that when you put in the new response pad, it'll lay flush and even with the yo-yo. So if you got some extra residue here, you could always take a paper towel and kind of get that out as much as possible, and you know, just be aggressive with it, and you can see that that comes out. All right, so I've gotten it all cleaned out here. One thing that you can also try if you've got a metal yo-yo if you're having a hard time getting the adhesive out, you could use a little bit of rubbing alcohol and maybe a Q-tip or something and rub that in there, and that'll help break it down a little bit. Don't do that on plastic yo-yos, but on metal it shouldn't be a problem. Just make sure it's all dried out before you put in the new response pad. So response pads are pretty easy to put in. All you're going to do, like I said, they're just like a sticker. So you're just going to peel the back off and that reveals the adhesive. And then you just need to fit it in place. And usually the response pad area is large enough that it's not too hard to get it in there. You can just press it down. And that's pretty much it. Typically when you replace one, you'll want to replace the other one as well. That's why response pads come in pairs. But those are response pads for your yo-yos.